Hello, Mr. Stinkbug. Thank you. Welcome, family. As you can see, we are heavily in the blueberry season. Now, blueberries are a wonderful fruit that's full of fiber and vitamins. It's also a great antioxidant. So, how do we make sure that we preserve enough blueberries so that we have them until next harvest season? Well, now that we've picked all these wonderful blueberries, one of the things that we can do to preserve them so that we have them all season long is we can either freeze them or do something like a water bath can. Now, the way that we freeze ours is we will take them and we'll wash them, and then we'll lay them out on a towel so that they can dry. Then we'll put them on a cookie sheet and do what's called flash freezing. We'll put them in the freezer so that they can freeze as individual berries. This is always good to do because if you put them in the other way, sometimes they'll clump together and you have a solid mass of blueberries instead of the individual berries. And this works wonderfully when you freeze them individually, so you can grab just a few to make, say, a smoothie, or to add to your oatmeal, or to even make get a couple cups out to make a blueberry cobbler. Now, another way that I like to do them is water bath canning them. Now, you can do several different projects with them. You can make jams, you can make jellies, you can make syrups, but I like to can them whole as well. And I do this so that I can put them in a cobbler. So, this is a really easy water bath canning project for us to work together. So why don't we grab us an apron and go in and let's do some water bath canning with blueberries. Okay, everyone, here we are in the kitchen. And we're going to go ahead and start the blueberries. Now, I took a few liberties and I went ahead and prepped some things. I went ahead and took our blueberries that we have just picked, and I went ahead and washed them, and they've been draining for a little bit. So those are ready to put in the jar. I went ahead and sterilized my jars because the processing time for these is 15 minutes. So it's less than the requirement for sterilization. So I went ahead and sterilized my jars. And they don't require this anymore, but I went ahead and I always warm my lids. I just love the concept in my head. They say it's not necessary, but I still have it in my head where I like to warm that seal up just a little bit. So what I did is I just took a boiler and I boiled some water. And then after it was boiling, I just took it completely off and set it down. And then I just put my lids in there with the seal side up. That way they can just warm a little bit while we're getting the jars ready. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is and I'll show you as we're going through it, we're going to put the berries that we just washed, and we're going to put those in the jars. Now, I went ahead and measured out. We didn't quite have a full canner full, but we did have 7 jars, and I'm willing to go with that. So we went ahead and got those blueberries ready. We're going to put them in the jar. I'm going to take you with me while we do that, and then we'll take you to step 2, which is the simple syrup that we're going to put in the jars with the berries. So stay tuned and I'll show you how to load the berries into the jars. Okay, so we're ready to load the jars. Now, whatever you feel comfortable with. If you want to use a measuring cup to put your berries in your jar, that's fine. If you want to put gloves on your hand to put your berries in your jar, that's fine. Whatever you feel comfortable with. Since these are our berries and we're not going to be giving them away to anybody, I'm just going to use my hands. They're clean. I've washed them. So all we're going to do at this point is just take the berries and fill them in the jar. Now, since I'm using pint jars today, as I said, I've already sterilized them. I'm going to fill these jars up to a 1/2 inch headspace. And I told you could measure this in 2 ways. I'm using the 4 jars funnel, and on the 4 jars funnel, it has its own little measuring on there. Or you can use a measuring tool, which Ball makes a measuring tool. It's the same tool that we use to debubble. And so, as I said, we're going to go for a 1/2 inch headspace. So we're going to make sure that we're going to hit that second little step going up there. Second little step that I've got my finger on. So we'll measure that as we're going. And that's the one thing I was telling you about these 4 jars canning the funnels. It has the measuring tool built right in. So as I'm putting the berries in the jar, I can see that we're right there. We're ready to go without having to measure. But on the next one. But just to show you how the measuring tool works, as I said, we're going to go for that second one right there. So we're just going to make sure that, yep, my food is right there at the base of the tool where it needs to be. So we're good. So we can move on to the next jar. Now I'm not going to bore you by sitting here and filling every single one of these jars up. So after I finish this next one, I'll go ahead and pause it, and we'll come back when it's time to make the syrup. As I said, this is a great first time water bath canning project. It's very easy and it doesn't take a lot of time. Okay, so we're up to that headspace that we need. I'm not forcing the berries in the jar. Make sure that we're at that ½ inch headspace, and we are. And we can go on to the next one. So come back in a moment and we'll show you how to make the simple syrup. Okay, now we're ready to make our simple syrup. Now I'm using the simple syrup recipe out of the University of Georgia's book, So Easy to Preserve. I really enjoyed their book. They've got a wonderful amount of recipes in there, and they pretty much go over every single thing that you can, whether it be water bath canning, pressure canning, or freezing, or even drying. They have recipes for everything in there, and it's a wonderful addition to your library. So that's the University of Georgia's book. It's called So Easy to Preserve. So I'm going by that recipe, and I'm going to make a medium syrup tonight. So that's it's recommended for berries. Now you can make a light, an extra light, or you can make a really heavy one. It just all depends on what you're preserving. If you're making maybe a tart apple, you might want to use a heavier syrup. If you're making something that's already super, super sweet, you may want to go with a lighter syrup. But for berries, we're going to go for a medium. And so for every quart of water that we use, we are going to use 1 3/4 cup of sugar. I'm going to go ahead and make a double batch because I've got plans for the other half. So I'm just going to go ahead and make 2 batches today. So let me grab a quart jar real quick. Okay, so I went ahead and measured out all my sugar, so I'm going to just put that in there. And now I just need 2 quarts of water. And this particular quart jar doesn't have the measurements on the side, but I know exactly where to fill that up to. Oh, and I'm a little bit short. So let me go grab some more hot water. Okay, so here's that second quart jar. And now we're going to put this on the stove and bring it up to a boil. And after it comes to a boil, then we're going to remove it and start adding it to our jars. Now, I know you don't want to watch water boil, so I'm just going to put the simple syrup on the stove, and I'll come back whenever it's hot and ready, and I'm going to go ahead and pour it up into the jars with you. Now, I just want to let you know, I went ahead and took my water bath canner, and we introduced that a couple videos ago, and we'll look at it again shortly. But I went ahead and took it, and I filled it halfway full of water. And I went ahead and did that so that it can be heating on the stove and ready. I don't think we're going to need much more water, but I've got boiling water set aside just to top it off so that we can make sure that our pint jars have 1 inch of water above it when we start to process it. So we'll be back in just a few minutes whenever I got this simple syrup boiling. Okay, now we've got our hot simple syrup. It's made, it was boiling, and I turned it off. The idea is you want to make the contents of your jar just as hot as the water that you're putting it into. So if you do a cold start, everything will be cold. But because we were going to be using a hot liquid, we're going to warm these berries up when we pour this liquid over them, this simple syrup, and then the water behind us will be up to a boil by that time. And we'll be able to put a hot jar inside of a hot pot, so we won't have any shocking experiences to where it's going to bust. So we're going to go ahead and ladle this in. Now you may have noticed that my syrup looks really brown. That's because we use pure cane sugar here. And because of that, it's going to be that darker color because it hasn't been bleached. So I'm going to go ahead and fill these jars up, and we're going to use the same principle as before. We're going to only bring it up to a 1/2 of an inch headspace. Now we discussed headspace in one of the earlier videos, but I'll go over that again. The headspace is the area between the food and the top of the jar. So that area in there is headspace. And you want to give adequate headspace in each one of your jars so that the food, while it's processing, has the ability to expand like it needs to when it's being canned. Whether you're water bath canning or pressure canning, you're going to want to make sure that you abide very closely to the directions, letting you know how much headspace to use. So let's go ahead and fill a few of these jars up, and then I'll put you on hold for a minute, and we'll go ahead and get the water bath canner ready. So let's go ahead and move. We're going to fill these up to a 1/2 an inch headspace. We're just going to ladle that hot liquid over those berries, and it's not going to take very much. And there we are at a 1/2 an inch headspace. Now I'm using my 4 jars. I know I sound like I'm preaching, but they have the measuring tool right in, but we will take the measuring tool over here and double check. We're looking for a 1/2 an inch, which is that one right there. So we set that on the side, and sure enough, there we are right at the top of the fruit. So we're going to set that aside. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill the rest of these jars up, and then I'm going to bring you back and show you the process that I go through to put the lids and the rings on the jars. I wish this was smell-o-vision, because these berries warmed up smells so yummy. Okay, I'll bring you back in just a minute. All right, now we're ready to put the lids and the rings on. The first thing we're going to do is take a paper towel. I just folded one up, just a regular paper towel. Dip it in your water, or maybe even put a little bit of vinegar on it. And all we're going to do is wipe the rims of the jar. We're just making sure that none of that simple syrup is there that's going to cause us a problem when we're wanting a seal on these jars. So we're just going to, and you might want to use a glove, or you might want to use a pot holder with this, because that juice inside, that simple syrup, is really hot. So we're just going to wipe the rest of these. We wound up only getting 6 jars, but that's okay. This is 6 jars that we'll put on our shelves now. Okay. Now that we've done that, set that aside. And I have this little magnet on the end of a stick. And they sell it, I think it's called a lid lifter. They sell it with any of the Ball products in like Walmart or so. And it just makes it really easy to grab out of this hot water, these lids. Now, I've told you before, I love using the 4 jars lids. They make wonderful products. They're based out of Florida. They use a fantastic metal. I've been using them for about 5 years, and I have not had a failure yet. Now you'll notice that I don't touch the seal at all. I make sure that I don't put any of my oils off of my fingers on those, because I don't want anything jeopardizing that possibility of it not sealing. So next we're going to put the ring on. Now we're just making that fingertip tight, and that's hard to describe, but you don't want to wrench it down. All you're wanting to do is get that tight enough to where you don't have anything leaking out of it while it's going through the processing phase. Just fingertip tight. All right, and here's our last one. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this in the pressure canner, or excuse me, the water bath canner, and I'll bring you back to show you how we lower that down and what it all looks like from that side. Hold on one second and I'll bring you back. Okay, everyone. So our water in our water bath canner, it's boiling and it's ready to go. Our jars are in there. They're warm too. Everything is warm on warm. So we're going to go ahead and lift the sides of this, and I should have turned it a little bit this way. We're going to lower this in, and we're going to make sure that our water is an inch above our jars. So I've got a kettle over here, and I've got water heating in it. So I'm going to put a little bit more water in here, let it come back to a boil, and then we'll start the timer. Okay, so we've got 1 inch of headspace above the jars. They're already starting to come back to a rapid boil. We're going to put the lid on, make it a little bit quicker, and we're going to keep our eye on this. And as soon as we get to that rapid boil, we're going to go ahead and set our timer for 15 minutes. I'll bring you back. Okay, our timer's gone off, so let's go ahead and hit the cancel button there. And then we're going to go ahead and take these jars out of the water. And we're going to let them sit there for about 5 minutes so that the boiling water or syrup that's inside those jars can calm down just a little bit before we put them on our drying pad. Now, remember when we initially talked about things that you want to have in your kit when you start canning was a boiling pad. And so we've got that set up over here already. That's going to be a good cushion between the countertop and these very, very hot jars so that they don't shock each other and cause the actual glass jar to break. So we're going to go ahead and get that set up for them over here. And then after we give these about 5 minutes, we'll come back and we'll go ahead and place those, and I'll bring you back at that time. Now, one thing I did remember to tell you that I didn't while I was doing the wiping of the rim of the jar. When you do that, you serve more than one purpose. Not only are you getting the debris that could possibly be there, whether it be sugar or a grease or an oil or something, you're not only removing that, but you're also checking the jar to make sure that you don't have an imperfection in that jar that's going to cause you to have a bad seal. So that's just a side note that I remembered to tell you. So we're going to give this another probably 4 minutes because we've been here about a minute talking, and then we will come back and I will show you how I lift these out and put them on the drying pad. Okay, let's go ahead and get these moved over to the drying pad so that they can rest overnight. And then I'll bring you back tomorrow. I will show them to you after we put them on the resting pad or the drying pad. But tomorrow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you back after they've sat 24 hours. And I'm going to show you exactly how I use these blueberries when I can them whole like this. And I got a couple little tricks where we don't waste anything. So I'm going to show you what that looks like tomorrow. So hold on one second. Let's go ahead and get this lifted out. And we're going to put these over here on the drying pad. All right, family, look at those beautiful jars. Well, we're going to let these sit for 24 hours, and then we're going to come back tomorrow, and I'm going to show you exactly what we use these blueberries for. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove the lid from the blueberries. And I've got this wonderful little tool. You don't necessarily need anything like this, but I've found over the years this works really, really nicely. I just purchased it off of Amazon. And you can use a bottle top opener. You can use any kind of a device like that. You can even use a spoon and pop it with the back side of the spoon. But we're just going to go ahead and pop that seal. You heard it pop. And then we're going to drain our berries. We're just going to take, I've got this little colander here, and I'm just going to pour our berries over into this colander so that we can capture that syrup that we've made. And I'm going to let that sit over onto the side, and I'm going to let that drain. Now I'm going to take a bowl. I'm going to put this up. I'm going to take a bowl, and this is what we're going to use to mix all the other ingredients. Hold on one second, let me grab my whisk. I've got to have it before. Now, as I said, I'll put this recipe in the description below. It's very, very simple, but it's so tasty. So we're going to use 1 cup of self-rising flour. Now, if you don't have self-rising flour or you're like us, we use spelt flour. So we have, it's an all-purpose flour. And if you have that, not a problem. All you're going to do is add a little bit of salt, like a half a teaspoon. You're going to use about a teaspoon of baking powder with it as well. So we're just going to go ahead, and I went ahead and sifted my flour just because I was using all of those other ingredients. I sifted them in. So as I said, if you don't have self-rising flour, it's really easy to take your all-purpose flour and add to it so that it will create a rise for you. Now we're going to use 1 cup of sugar, and as I stated before, we use a organic cane sugar. It's not been bleached, so that's just 1 cup. And just mix that around a little bit. And then the next ingredient is 1 cup of milk. So far, simple. A cup of sugar, a cup of self-rising flour, and a cup of milk. We're going to whisk that together really nicely. And once all your ingredients are incorporated, now over the years I have found out that my husband loves a dash of vanilla in there. So I'm going to grab the vanilla and add just a tablespoon, or excuse me, a teaspoon, not a tablespoon, just a teaspoon of that so that he has his vanilla in there. And then the last ingredients is going to be the berries. And there's approximately a little over a cup here. I usually, especially if they're fresh, I'll do 2 cups. But the ingredients of 1 jar works just as well as anything. So I just go ahead and just empty the contents. And then I'm going to fold that gently in next. And that's all there is to it. So we're going to pour this over our butter after it's melted, and I'll bring it out of the oven. Now, you may ask, well, what are you going to do with that syrup? It's a very simple syrup. This one, as I said, when we made it, is a medium syrup. So what I'll do is sometimes I'll add a little, if it looks a little runny, I'll add a little bit of thickener to it, which you can just use a tapioca starch to thicken it just a touch. And then you can make some beautiful blueberry pancakes. Well, at least the syrup can be. Even if you don't have the fresh blueberries, you can use the syrup to just use it to instead of maple syrup or cane syrup. So that's what we'll save this for, because we're not going to get rid of it. I'm going to pour it right back into the jar, put it in the refrigerator so that we can use it in the morning over our pancakes. Okay, hold on just a minute and I'll grab the baking dish out of the oven and see if we've got it melted and ready to go. Okay, our butter is nice and melted. So now we're just going to add our mixture. We're going to pour it right on in. Hopefully we won't have too much of a rise on it. Now we're going to put this back in the oven and we're going to bake it for 30 to 45 minutes. We're just going to watch it and wait until the center is nice and solid. And I'll bring it back afterwards. Oh my goodness, family, look at that blueberry cobbler. There is nothing like my mama's blueberry cobbler. You know what? I think the only thing that's missing is some homemade vanilla ice cream. Hey, that's another idea for your syrup. You can pour your syrup right over your homemade ice cream to serve with your blueberry cobbler. That sounds like dessert for tonight.